All right.
There we go.
We are live
and ready for action
with the Revitalized podcast.
Revitalized podcast.
Revitalized podcast.
Awesome. I love doing this with you, honey.
Yeah, baby, it's so much fun.
Okay. All right, everyone. I hope you're doing fantastic today, tonight, this evening,
Absolutely.
this afternoon, wherever you are. Well, basically,
To kick things off, we've all heard the expression, you are what you eat. But we say you are what you properly and efficiently digest.
you are what you utilize.
Exactly. You are what you utilize. You are what you consume. You're not just the food that goes in your mouth. You are the nutrients from all the stuff that you consume that your body uses to rebuild from, to make new cells, to make new organs, not new organs, to rebuild organs, to make new tissues. And a lot of the time, people just think that because they ate something, their body is just getting the most possible benefit from that thing that it can,
Yes.
just because they ate it. And that's just not how nutrition works. It's not
Absolutely.
how digestion works.
Yeah.
And so,
Keep going. No, you're good.
ladies first.
It's okay.
I'm not doing it.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I was just agreeing with you, and I was just saying, like, yes, it's very important to really take context into account, because sometimes people focus the entirety of their day, of everything they do for their health, on just like what's on their plate and not what's actually going on inside their body.
Exactly. So one of the most important things that anybody needs to actually understand, and not just hear and repeat, or think that they've been told before, is just that health comes from the inside out, period and always. So whether we're talking about food, whether we're talking about exercise, whether we're talking about sleep, whether we're talking about hormones, whether we're talking about anything, like, it has to be, the health of your body is limited by the state of the inside.
Yes.
Right? It's the inside out. The health of your skin, the health of your hair, the health of your heart, the health of your muscles. It's the inside here, and then it comes out, and then it shows on the outside, right? And so we're going to talk about some really important nutrition principles tonight.
Yes.
Nutrition
Absolutely.
principles to make sure people know how to eat, know how to digest, just as importantly as to know what to eat. But before we do that, we got to thank our donors. So thank you, everybody who has donated to revitalize our world.
Yes.
We are extremely grateful to you guys. We have some of the best clients, the best team, the best community, the best supporters ever. You guys are rocking and rolling, and we love it.
Yep. You're helping us make a lot of things possible.
Exactly.
Because, being healthy is a human right. And if we can do something to help with that, then we really want to. And each of you are helping us do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like, this podcast wouldn't be possible. Our workshops wouldn't be possible. A lot of the other free things that we do, that you guys know what we do if you're involved in our communities and things like that. It just wouldn't be able to happen, if we didn't have your guys' support. So thank you all so much. And to pay back, we're going to do our best to teach some really, really good, important things when it comes to nutrition. I'm
Yes.
way too much over this way.
Oh, okay.
Way too much over that way.
All right, let's get into it. So basically, what Justyn and I believe in is, for diet-wise, people are always like, oh, are you vegan? Are you this? Are you that? Right? So basically, we like to call our diet the living diet. So it's literally a diet that promotes your life, that gives you the most benefit to just keep your biological machine moving. Keep it moving and shaking it and just working optimally. And so basically the living diet is based on what is going to truly fuel your body, not what's political, not what's trendy, what is, a sustainable,
It's crazy
holistic.
that nutrition can even get political. That's bananas.
I guess everything can get political these days, but anyways, it's a diet where we're actually going to look at what's not only sustainable, but what's going to give you the furthest reach, the most bang for your buck, right?
Exactly.
The best, possibility to get the most out of a diet.
Totally, because it's not just what you're eating. The food is just a means to supply the nutrients that your body needs on the inside, right? So your heart needs certain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. It needs proteins. It needs different things for your body to even create the heart in the first place. The nutrients and the resources used to build all these parts, whether it's a cell or a tissue or an organ system, it's from our food. That's the stuff that supplies the resources to build it, right? But it's not just you ate a steak and so you get steak into your body. You eat a steak and then all the individual proteins get slowly broken down into individual amino acids, and each individual amino acid has a different purpose and function. and binds with different things like enzymes and works in tandem with different stuff like bacteria. And then not just the proteins, but there's also the vitamins and the minerals, and all those have different cofactors. And then certain foods have antioxidants in them. Certain foods have different macronutrients, higher or lower amounts of fiber or fat or whatever. And so learning and understanding that your body digests and sucks out the nutrients from the food that you're eating, and it's not just chewing only, is a really important thing that not many people truly grasp, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I'm sure some of you who have been interested in health for a while have gathered that most diets or most recommendations on diets, they focus just on the macros. They don't focus on the micros, and they don't focus on making sure that your food is in a state that it needs to be for true utilization.
Yeah.
So we're going to go more into that and go into the specific details around the way we eat, around what the way of eating that has given us and our clients the most incredible results, because we've worked with a lot of people that thought they were eating healthy, and in reality, they needed help with that.
Right. So first and foremost, just to clarify, like, there is no perfect diet for everybody. That doesn't exist. But there are principles that we've found that work for the vast majority of people and are in line with, just the principles of the body, the principles of nature. Right. And so when we're talking about a living diet, we've done our best to define it. And it's based on fueling your body with a wide variety of an omnivorous variety of food. So omnivorous means plants and meat. It means you're eating a wide variety of different things, all the different food groups that either come out of the ground or eat what comes out of the ground. So we're not promoting veganism. We're not promoting going carnivore. We're not promoting keto. We're not promoting paleo. We're promoting having a healthy enough digestive system, because that's where this whole thing starts. It starts on the inside. Having a healthy enough digestive system where you can eat all the different food groups that we have available on Earth that can support the body in a different way. So you're eating a wide variety, a wide omnivorous variety of the highest quality food that you can get. Food quality is just as important as quantity and sourcing and different arrangements and how you get all the different stuff on your plate. Food quality is really, really important. There's a lot of stuff that shows now that, the way different plants or crops or animals are grown or harvested or produced can change the nutrition profile by up to 20 times in certain nutrients, certain minerals, certain vitamins, certain amounts of fat to protein in animals and different things like that. So the quality of your food is really important. You don't have to just, become a religious person about it and only buy things that have an organic label, but you have to be aware of what's in the food, how it's prepared to some degree, and to know what can and does affect the quality of that food, and most importantly, the nutrition profile of that food, and then if there's anything that can, affect how your body digests and absorbs those nutrients, okay? So it has to be a wide variety of high-quality omnivorous food that are focused on supplying all of your essential nutrients. So that's all the different macros, obviously, all the different micros, and then other categories that people don't typically talk about, which would be, things like antioxidants, different things like, certain amounts of fiber and starch. A lot of people don't really track how much of those they're eating. They just try to make sure they get some in. But they're not really, they're not nearly as dedicated or specific around all the different nutrient categories as they are the main ones, or just tracking the calories, or just looking for a certain micronutrient that they think they might be deficient in. But you have to get all your essential nutrients, okay, on the macro and the micro levels. And you have to learn how to prepare those foods and eat those foods in a natural form that supports bioavailability, which is just a really fancy word of just saying it digests well, digests better, right? And then you have to make sure that your lifestyle and your diet in general is supporting your digestive system to handle all those kinds of things. Because if you can't get the nutrients from a food, even if it's supposed to be healthy, it's not really valuable to eat that food until you fix your digestion.
And so it's really important, when we're talking about digestion, as Justyn is saying, yes, you want to prioritize the quality of the food, the way you're making it and everything. But, if your body is having trouble utilizing that food, then, that's a bigger problem, because you could have the most perfect diet and it's not giving you, the real benefit that based on the effort that you're putting in. And so a big part of that is actually due to a sluggish detoxification system. So basically your body has multiple different ways to detox. And if you guys didn't see our last 2 videos, there's a part 1 and part 2, as we do with our videos, because we like to have one video just on questions and answers. The thing is with, if your natural detoxification systems, if they're not on par, if they're sluggish, then you're going to have malfunctions going on in your body, because again, it's a machine. Totally. And one of the primary malfunctions that can take course is a poor digestion, poor utilization of nutrients, right? To have good input, you have to have good output.
Well, because if you go back to the basics, one of the things that we find is that with basically all disease that we're aware of anyway, either on some level, toxemia or malnutrition or both are going to be a big cause in why the body has not been able to protect or defend or reverse that thing, right? So if we're looking at your food, obviously malnutrition is just your nutrition, the levels of all these different nutrients not being what they're supposed to be. Toxemia is an accumulation of toxins in the body that cause different kinds of issues, different kinds of dysfunction. They attack certain parts of the body, certain organs, they cause extra stress on your different systems, your immune system, your nervous system, whatever, right? And so if you're not cleansing properly, which by the way, the body is built to detox every single day of your life, just like you have to breathe every day of your life, you have to drink water every day of your life, you have to, get outside and move every day of your life, you have to cleanse and detox, right? And we go into that really deeply in our last 2 detox episodes. But if you don't have those pathways cleansing very well, even if your food is really good, it's like you're changing the oil in your car, but you're not changing the oil filter. All these fancy fresh nutrients and all these nutrient dense foods and the whole foods and the low sugar foods and whatever else that you're eating, whatever changes you're making in your diet, they still have to go through this clogged up system. They have to travel through intestines that are backed up with gunk, backed up with undigested waste, backed up with all the different toxins and inflammatory agents and EDCs and POPs and chemicals and all these different things that people have gotten exposed to and have got inside of our body that impede digestion, that impede absorption, that impede just means to make worse. It means to slow it down.
So the best thing would be probably to go check out our last episodes if detoxing is something you want to look more into. But let's continue on with talking about food in its natural form, because we wanted to specify what we mean by the body. One of the examples of how the body isn't utilizing nutrients efficiently, and an accumulation of toxins is absolutely one of the main ones, for sure.
Big time.
So again,
and it's also because any good diet is not, first and foremost, it's not based on what foods you're eating only. Like that's a really important part of it, obviously. But for a diet to be good, your body has to be able to absorb the nutrients from it. That's the most important thing. So whether somebody's going carnivore or keto or vegan, or they're trying to follow the living diet, whatever they're trying to do, it is still the results of that diet and the benefit of that diet are limited by how well your body can absorb the food you're eating. So that has to be the number one thing we look at. And then we build on with a good profile of nutrients, a good profile of foods, a good healthy system to get enough of the nutrients in every single day in a way that you can manage and you can afford and you can prepare properly and that you enjoy the taste of and all these kinds of things. But it has to be your body's digestion first, right? Because if you put gas in your car, but something's wrong with the gas tank and it doesn't get the fuel to the engine, no matter how fancy your engine is, the car's still not going to go nowhere. It's still not going to move because the fuel doesn't reach the engine. So we have to look at digestion efficiency, bioavailability, all these things. And then we build the diet around that. And a lot of the time, you can use food to support that. But that's why we're bringing up the detox stuff, even though it doesn't necessarily have to do with like nutrition specifically, because you have to make sure your system works well in order to use the stuff that you want to build a healthy system. Does that make sense? Yeah. Did I overdo it a little bit?
No. You're good. Okay. Right. So back to like the whole natural form. So the thing is like, remember your body, it's a biological natural machine. Okay. You're not your body, but you have a body.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with eating foods that are chemically, molecularly altered is that it's not natural. Your body was designed to consume what is natural. It's kind of the same as how a mind can't comprehend, can't, grow stronger, can't, be efficient when it's in a negative toxic environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing with the body. And, when something is synthetic, then it doesn't have the profile that our bodies can utilize efficiently.
Well, exactly. And by definition, synthetic means that it at some point would have had to be made with a chemical, some kind of chemical. Not all chemicals are bad. We're not we're not radicalists or anything like that. Like, I understand that modern technology can be a very, very awesome thing. But at the same time, the majority of food that most people eat today that does have some synthetics in it, some chemicals, some GMOs, some preservatives, some food dyes, it's been made in a lab at some point in its production. They don't do well in the body. They don't digest well. They don't nourish well. Even if they did, they've only been around for 100, 150 years. And it takes time for our species to adapt to new things. And we've been living off of completely natural foods for thousands and thousands of years. So working in harmony with the body is always going to be the smartest option, because our bodies are smarter than any scientist ever could be.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever had to plug a USB cable into my arm and teach my body how to convert oxygen into energy. I talk about that all the time, because it just comes pre-programmed. My body is pre-programmed how to digest and get nutrients out of foods that it knows, nutrients that it recognizes. And when we change those kinds of things, it has to learn this whole new system. And oftentimes those foods are very nutrient lacking. They don't have hardly anything in them. They're just flavored air that make you fat. And they're not cheaper. You pay more for them than you would if you bought like real single ingredient whole foods, single ingredient animal foods, plant foods, like whole natural stuff. Synthetics, packages, bags, containers, boxes, wrappers, those are all more expensive than the real things, than the how those foods hopefully started. And so there's no benefit to it at all. It's just these hyper palatable, calorie dense, nutrient deficient foods that everybody is hooked on these days, and it just become food like products, and synthetics of what got us there, because you couldn't make foods like that unless you used chemicals to produce it, because the foods we have had that are made naturally have been around forever. They haven't changed. An apple has been an apple as long as it's been an apple. Sometimes maybe people make different kinds of apples. Sometimes they make them more red. Sometimes they make them a different color. Sometimes they make berries have more sugar in them than they did 150 years ago, 1,000 years ago, whatever. But it's still a strawberry.
Yeah.
Still an apple. Still a cow.
So in other words, eating food in its natural form is to eat food that's as closest to, how it was actually created, right?
Exactly.
So how it's actually made. So like, as Justyn was saying, an apple is an apple, right? So not apple flavored bacon, right? So we want to prepare our foods with I'm sure it's
a thing.
Oh,
I know
sure
apple bacon's a thing, but apple flavored bacon? We got a GPT
there's some pretty crazy things out there. Okay, you'll probably find it, at least in the States.
Have you heard of deep fried Mars bars before?
Yeah, there's deep fried ice cream. They deep fry everything.
That's crazy to me.
Okay,
it's already chocolate. Why do you got to deep fry it?
Anyways,
I can't imagine that tastes good.
So preparing your food with as little cooking and chemicals and processing as possible is a large part of really emphasizing that healthier digestion and improving bioavailability.
Exactly. And one of the easy rules that we try to teach everybody is just, and I'm sure everybody has heard this in some form or another. It's even popular in like business and entrepreneurship circles, but it's just the 80-20 rule, And so our general guideline for most people is you do 80% whole food. So it's single ingredient things that come out of the ground or that live off of what comes out of the ground. So we're talking a steak, we're talking an egg, we're talking some kale, an apple. We're not talking applesauce. We're not talking
apple flavored bacon.
Apple flavored bacon.
Exactly. That's not a thing, okay? No matter how many apples your piggy eats, it's not going to be apple flavored.
Exactly. And then the 20% would be processed foods made from whole food ingredients. So that's like some natural applesauce.
Yeah.
They didn't take apple flavoring and put it to a mixture of pig gelatin to make it look like it was made of apples, but it was actually made of ground down pig hooves that they made to taste like apples with a bunch of sugar and apple juice, and then sold you apple sauce.
Yeah.
It's real stuff. So it's 80% whole food, 20% healthy processed food, and 0% ultra processed foods.
Yes. And when we say ultra processed foods, we're talking about stuff like Twinkies,
Exactly.
McDonald's.
Things that have been made with synthetic chemicals, and you cannot recreate those things without those synthetic chemicals.
There's like near zero or even zero nutritional benefit to consuming food like that, other than maybe like some calories. You know what I mean? Like technically it would keep you alive, you wouldn't starve.
Yep.
But it's not benefiting you the way that your body needs to be fueled. And so, you know, just to get specific, whole foods, you know, as Justyn was saying, is like an apple, a potato, an onion, kale, steak, etc. Right? So like full on ingredients. Processed foods are things that are prepared for you, right? So instead of an apple, there's applesauce, right? Not applesauce you make at home, but something that's manufactured in a factory for you, right? So organic ketchup, or you know, jarred sauerkraut, or applesauce, or you know, maybe cheese, because it's made for you, right, by a company. But again, they're using natural ingredients, so it's processed, right? It was on the shelf, it was a prepackaged good, etc., etc. But it's, you know, it's again, it's keeping things as close to their natural form as possible, because that's what your body recognizes. Ultra processed foods, like I said again, is things like Twinkies, you know, fast food, like just pure junk, pure white sugar, fake sugar. Like there's nothing good about it in any way, shape, or form at all. So if you can keep that as limited as humanly possible to near zero, that's quite optimal.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I promise you guys, you can make the most tasty, delicious, extravagant food. Like anything that you want to make.
Oh my God.
Like you don't
even get me started.
You don't need fast food joints. Okay. No. Like they don't even clean properly.
And one thing that people, and a lot of people don't honestly believe us until they've actually experienced it. But when you start to make these changes with your diet, if you can power through those first few days, the first couple weeks, the first month or two, maybe, what you'll notice is as your body becomes more nourished and much cleaner on the inside, because at the same time that we work with nutrition, it's always some form of promoting detoxification in the body as well. That's always like a staple every time we do anything with anybody. You notice that your palate, not your palate. Well, yeah, your palate, 'cause your palate's how you taste things, but your palate's also the roof of your mouth, so it's confusing. But anyway, your taste buds and the preferences you have for flavors, they change a lot. And your cravings for the potato chips, your cravings for the Twinkies, your cravings for the monster drinks, your cravings for all these things that you know you shouldn't do, but your body still wants for some weird reason, they start to go away. And you don't even miss it. Like every once in a while, you get a whiff of some, you know, a pizza restaurant, and you're like, oh, that'd be great, you know, pizza.
Yeah, and then you look at it, and you're disgusted.
And then you also remember that because you know that Elle exists, and you've seen some of her stuff before, you can make your own pizza at home that tastes way better, and it doesn't take you all night long to do it either. Like you can make it quickly, you know, and it tastes delicious, and it can actually nourish your body, and it's probably cheaper because let's be honest, nobody's going to Domino's just for a pizza. They're also probably going to get a pop, and they're probably going to get a side, and they're probably going to get something else. And so like most people aren't leaving Domino's without spending, you know, 20, 30, 40 bucks. You could make 3-4 homemade pizzas for that much.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they taste better. And they're better for your body. And it's an awesome family bonding experience. Who doesn't love pizza now? You know what I'm saying?
And so, you know, yeah, making food the right way is definitely worth it. And it really doesn't have to be this extravagant, over expensive. You have to climb up to the toppest peak in the Himalayan mountains to find an ingredient you specifically need kind of ordeal.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like it actually is far more simplified and sustainable than people realize. Because, you know, we human beings have been eating naturally for a very, very, very long time. This whole new synthetic put fillers and dyes and chemicals and everything is something very new.
Exactly.
And, we're paying the price for it. Our bodies are paying the price for it. We're aging faster. We have less energy. We have less vitality.
It's projected that by 2035, in just 10 years, over 60% of the population in North America is going to be obese, like morbidly obese. That is crazy. Like, that was never a problem at any other point in human history, except for now, when everybody has these super sedentary lifestyles. They're sitting at a desk for 8 hours because they have to make money to provide for their family. They have to, skip out on making homemade meals because they don't have time, because they're on a crazy schedule. They're eating all these super hyper palatable, nutrient, like just depleted foods, food like products.
Yeah.
And they're blowing all their money on coffee and Twinkies and tacos and shawarma and burgers and all these things that is just, slowly but surely breaking down their body's natural systems of staying healthy. And then they gain weight. They gain these autoimmune problems. They gain these aches, these pains. They're 20, 30, 40 years old and they look like they could be 50. Like, it's crazy. And we are what we consume. And so what we're putting in our bodies, it's the only thing that our body has to rebuild from. It's the only thing that you have to work with. Whatever is in here is the best you can do. And so food is just such a super important part of it, but it's also very, very simple. I think it's been really, really complicated by a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions.
Yeah.
And a lot of really, fancy Instagram accounts.
Yeah. Now people are telling you like, oh, we watch out for the different whole foods that are bad for you. They're toxic. And it just goes into a spiral.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, the next point that we wanted to talk to you guys about, making sure that you are, staying with the living diet, which is what we call it. In other words, a diet that helps promote your life, right?
Mm-hmm,
so, one that you can live off of, right? Is also making sure that you have a calm mindset when you're eating.
Big time.
So the thing is like, we really prioritize mental health around here, and mind and body and spirit, it's all connected. You can't just help a person have the healing and reach the goals that they want in their health through only taking a physical approach. There has to be certain routines that help them to have a life with more peace. Because when your body's at peace, that is the most optimal state of being for the body, for true healing to happen, for recovery to happen, for,
digestion,
proper nourishment.
everything.
I was just going to say, so, when you are stressed out right before you eat, right? Because a lot of people can be doing that. They're at work, they're rushing, et cetera, et cetera. When this happens, they're rushing.
Oh, I was going to say, I think we have non-Russian people too.
When this happens, it will affect your digestion, because when you are communicating to your body that there's a reason to be stressed out, there's a reason to be anxious, et cetera, then it puts you in a state, through listening to you, to what you're telling it, into a state of fight or flight, right? Mm-hmm. Digestion is not very important when you're stressed out to the body, because when you're stressed out is being prepared to assist you to move quickly, to react efficiently, right?
Yep.
Like if there's a bear, then you need to have, more energy specifically in your limbs to run away.
Exactly.
It's not prioritizing digestion. That's why, if you haven't heard these two words before, or these two examples before, but it's the fight or flight, and the opposite to that is rest and digest. It literally has digest in the name. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you are someone who wants to digest their food properly and who wants to recover properly, you cannot be stressed out. Exactly. And one of the worst times to be stressed out, other than right before you go to bed, that's not a fun time, is before you eat.
Totally. And to prove this point, we've seen a lot of folks that stress eat, but because they're health conscious, they pick really good options. Like, they're not stress eating on pints of ice cream. Mm-hmm. They're stress eating on like some homemade date cacao bark. They're stress eating on a sweet potato and some like a living bowl. They're stress eating on like real food. But because they're constantly eating in this stressed out state, even if the food's awesome, they're still not digesting it well, because that's such an important part of any decent diet. The digestion has to be the base of everything, right? And one of the things that we know is when somebody gets into a highly emotional state, whether that's stress, sorrow, fear, anger, depression, Like the reverberations of those emotions can go all the way down to your DNA and your gene expression. So it's how your DNA sends information to the rest of your body, and that information can get heavily corrupted just because you're in a highly emotional state, and that changes the different systems in your body. It changes the way electricity flows in your body. And when you're trying to absorb nutrients from food in that state, that mental and emotional anguish, it's like you're trying to hit the gas and the brake pedal at the same time. It's just two opposing systems, and it doesn't work very well. And because the stress affects up here and our brain controls what our body does, the emotions usually win. Your body's never once been like, hey, I need to eat right now, so calm the frick down, and then all of a sudden your anxiety goes away. You might get temporary relief from the flavor, from the satisfying feeling of having a full belly. You might have some kind of coping mechanisms around food, and so it gives you this temporary respite from your feelings. But then as soon as the plate's empty, 5 minutes later, it all comes rushing right back, right? And so it's not an answer to the solution to the problem. It's just something that people use to avoid stuff like that. But if you have those kinds of habits, whether the food quality is really bad or really good, it still has big effects. Like I said, we've had people that have this stress eating habit, and they'll still have lots of gut problems, even though their food's awesome, because their mind is not awesome. Their mind needs some work, and their mind is going down and affecting other systems in the body and making those not work like they're supposed to. So it's not just the food quality. The stress eating and the mental peace when you're digesting is a very, very important thing.
Absolutely. So the next part that we're going to talk about is heavily chewing your food. And when we say heavily, we mean heavily. Like you want to chew around 20, 30 times per bite?
Yeah, at least. That's not that's the low end. It depends on what you're eating.
I know. And sometimes it can feel...
And we're looking at a couple of you. You know who you are. There's some of you that are in the academy right now. I know like to listen to the podcast. There's one particular person on the team. There's a bunch of people that are viewing that we have never met before, but we're looking at you. We're staring into your soul, and you know what's going on. You know that this is something you need to hear right now. This is your sign, whatever they say on the Instagram. This is your sign to chew your food better.
Yes, absolutely. You better listen to him, okay? I'll tell you one thing. This is one rule that I really prioritize. I always seem to be the last one to finish my food every time. And so, sometimes at first it's almost awkward. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to chew so much. Like that seems weird, but it's something that's very important.
Look at those jaw muscles. You think this is all genetics? Nuh-uh. That's hard work.
It's mostly genetics.
It's jaw muscle hypertrophy. It's heavy training routines. All right, you just gotta. It works.
Yes.
It works.
Yeah, absolutely. And
what do they call it? Like, what do the kids do? Mewing?
Yeah.
Is that where they...
Yeah.
Look at my big chin. I'm mewing. That's off topic. Sorry.
It's okay. Anyway, but the point being, though, is the more you chew, the less work the rest of your body will have to do in order to compensate for that, because it gives you a huge advantage, to just really start the whole process.
One of the things that my dad taught me when I was a kid was that I only had one set of teeth. I don't have any extra teeth in my stomach or my intestines or anywhere. These teeth right here are the only chance that my body's going to have to break down that food with teeth. So use them. And for some reason it made sense, and I chewed my food a lot. When I wasn't an emotional basket case. I'm not supposed to say that. When I wasn't, you get it. You get the idea.
Just a monkey.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are a lot of the, top principles that we go into. Now we're going to go a little bit more specific. So especially, a lot of people, when they're trying to understand nutrition, some of their first questions have to do around macros.
Yep.
So, what's the fats, the protein, the carbs? Some people are saying fats are bad or carbs are bad or you don't need protein. I don't even know how that was even allowed on the internet. That's pretty crazy for someone to say you don't need protein. But anyways, that's okay. So one of the things that we really like to do in order to really prioritize optimal digestion, to really help your blood sugar levels, to really help your energy levels and a bunch of other components, because, that's what the living diet is. It's really taking your life into account, again, with the sustainability, again, with making sure that you don't feel very sluggish after you eat, reducing the chances of you not getting the nutrients that you need from your food, and also, not creating more problems. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, I just want to eat whatever I want. It's like, you can do that, but you have to know when you do whatever you want, there's consequences that follow through from your actions. I mean, like, there's certain rules that just come with things, and that's what'll bring you the best benefit in life, right?
Exactly.
It's just like a relationship. Justin and I, we have rules in our relationship and our marriage, right? He can't be looking at girls. I can't be looking at guys, right? You know what I mean? There's certain rules, and that's not restrictive.
I literally don't even see other women.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, they're
not.
invisible to me.
Yeah, I know. It's
It's like how some people don't see race. I don't see women.
The thing is like, if you want a good life, there are certain restrictions you have to put into place. When it comes to food, there can be a lot of emotions around it, right? Because it's something so personal. But there are certain things to keep into account, because at the end of the day, your body is still a machine, and you have to fuel your body efficiently in order for it to operate efficiently. So anyways, back to the whole macro point. So one of the things we like to do is we like to have a 1-to-1 ratio, actually, of proteins to fats. And then we adjust the carbohydrates based on our activity level.
Exactly. And again, like, this is not a set in stone rule that you have to follow in order to be a highly optimal, nutrient dense, powerful, athletic machine. But it's a good baseline. It's a really good baseline. A lot of people respond well to this.
Yes.
Obviously, there have to be specific adjustments made to each person individually as they go through their health journey. That's a given with anything, whether we're talking about food or exercise or sleep or hormones or anything. Doesn't matter. But a good base, 1-to-1 ratio, 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of fat. I know a lot of people are going to hear that and be like, oh my God, but the calories. If you're eating very protein dense foods, very fat dense foods, you typically get very satiated much faster than you're used to. And you don't end up eating as much food. And so even though there's a lot of calories in every gram of fat, you don't end up eating, the volume of food is not that great compared to normal. The portion sizes become much smaller. They become much healthier to digest. And because you're eating primarily whole foods, and even the foods you're eating that aren't just whole foods are based off whole food ingredients, they're all still very nutrient dense. And so you can eat less volume of food every day and still put on muscle, still maintain good healthy organ function, still grow as a person. A lot of the time people overeat with the food, even healthy foods, even like, a lot of bodybuilders are really focused on whole foods and single ingredient stuff, and a lot of different dietitians and people like that are really focused on good quality food. And that's not like a new concept or anything, but because either the digestion isn't as good as it could be, or because the macros might be a little bit off and they're not as satiated as they should be, or they are still deficient in a certain nutrient or two, or even a whole category, then they still have these hunger cravings, even though their calories are met for that day, or their protein's met for that day, but their carbs were pretty low, or their carbs were high, but their protein was low. And so a good balance is really helpful. And just generally, like we were saying, 1-to-1 protein to fat. And then you adjust your carbs based on how active you're being, how much energy you're burning, how much carbs and sugar you're actually using in your body, because it's a big fuel source, right? And so like if I'm having a day in the office and I'm just, working on a new course, I'm writing out something for our book, I'm just chilling with Elle and relaxing on a good little Sunday, like I don't need a lot of carbs that day. Like, so I might even go like borderline keto for a day or two if my activity level is low enough. But at the same time, if I'm going to have a heavy sprint day and I'm running my ass up a mountain, or we're going on a 2-3 hour hike or something like that, or we're going out bike riding, or we're going snowboarding in the winter, or like we're taking Max to the dog park and just running around with him for whatever, and I'm like burning a lot of calories and I'm using up a lot of energy, I'm not going to deprive myself of replenishing that for my body. That's silly. It doesn't make any sense. If you burn fuel, you put the fuel back. And so my carbs go up because I used more. And so if you learn how to do that, and then also an extra bonus tip, which kind of takes some time to learn and some skill to figure out, but if you can time your carbs around when you're actually active, that's also another level on top of that, where you can make sure that, the carbs, you can eat a significant amount of them without getting the downsides that a lot of people do with their blood sugar and their insulin, different things like that. But anyway, 1-to-1 fat to protein,
Yeah.
adjust carbs based on activity level.
And women do need a bit more carbs, you know, just in general.
Yeah, fiber specifically, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. Really, really important for sure. Yeah, men and women should not eat the same. So that's also another tip that we can.
And we shouldn't
mention
drink
right there.
the same amount of water. Like we do, we
Nope.
just do things differently because we're
very,
different
very,
people.
very different bodies
Mm-hmm.
for sure. You know, another one just on the macro idea is you want to prioritize protein first when you're planning out your diet, when you're meal prepping, when you're figuring out what's going on my plate.
Yes.
What is the protein going on my plate? And then you complement that with whatever else you need.
Yeah, and that's really easy to do for food prepping, you guys. I'm telling you, it's actually really not that complicated. And you
Yep.
don't need to make 7 meals that are the exact same.
Exactly.
What you want to do is you want to be prepared and have multiple different sources of protein that you can choose from. Okay, so for example, I really like just throwing 2 chickens in the oven and then I have chicken for the next, you know, like 3 or 4 days. Or I have beef jerky. We love making our own jerky, and that's something that lasts a long time. Or, you know,
well,
of course.
if we're being technical, we love it when you make the jerky, and I love eating it because I'm not very good at making it, and you do it such good.
Yeah, but
and
we
you're
love
incredible.
beef jerky.
We love
And
jerky.
then, you know, we also really like having eggs on hand too. And we have as a backup as well, we have a really good quality protein powder that, you know, doesn't have any fillers, it's raw, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, it's just it's what is actually going to fuel our bodies. And it's kind of like I make this example mostly when I'm explaining this to women, so I'm not sure if every woman will get this, but basically when you plan an outfit, you pick one piece of clothing that you specifically want to wear, and then you know, just put everything else together based off of that one item, like a shirt or a pair of pants or whatever.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing with protein. So if I know for lunch or whatever that I'm going to use chicken or I'm going to use jerky or whatever, then I just put everything else based on what works with that. And it's really, really easy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's no different than any other way of eating. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah. And
you
so
know?
for our follow-up episode, which, you know, we're going to close out here a bit soon, but for our follow-up episode where we're going to go over Q&A on nutrition, on the principles of the living diet, if you guys have questions on meal prepping, because this is something that Justyn and I, you know, really help people with, you know, is preparing their meals, because it's great if we tell people stuff, but if we can't teach them, right, if we don't actually show them how to do it sustainably, it's not going to last.
Exactly.
And the way we do things around here is we give people examples and explanations and information and et cetera, to make sure that things last. So if you guys have questions on food prepping or like all these things, make sure you write them below so we can go ahead and answer those on the next podcast. So next Tuesday at 7 p.m. EST.
Exactly. And the last one that we'll just kind of cover, just to, because we want, there's more to nutrition than just these simple things here. And obviously, like, we're just kind of, you know, going surface level with some of these things because one, we're talking to a really general audience. We don't know any of you guys personally. We don't know what is best for your body at your situation with your schedule and your lifestyle. But we're just trying to go over basic principles that we've seen work really, really well to help point you guys in a good direction, give you a good base, and then you build on it as high as you want from there, right? But one more thing that's really important that everybody should learn and should know and should just be aware of is also like your eating routine, your eating schedule. So like we you know, promote a pretty good solid base for most people of about, you know, 4 meals a day. One of the things that we notice happens when you do that is your serving sizes go down because you still have these goals you're setting for your different nutrients, right? You still have your protein goal, you still have your calorie goal, you still have your vitamin C goal. But if we break up the eating window and, you know, we're eating like every 2 hours over an 8-hour eating window, and we're eating 4 meals instead of 2 or instead of 3, the serving sizes go down. That you have to think more intentionally about what you're eating. And because the serving sizes go down, the portion sizes are more normal, and you're not eating as much of each nutrient at a time, we notice that just that change alone, digestion goes way up in a lot of people.
Definitely.
You know, the way that your body can digest 20 or 30 or 40 grams of protein at once versus 60, 70, 80, 100 grams at once, if you want to go nuts with some of these fitness influencers, you know, it's different. Like, the amount, the quality, the quantity of everything matters, right? So shrinking it down, getting to a more healthy, faster digesting meal portion is a great idea. And also on top of that, we also would recommend that most people keep breakfast and dinner fairly small, focus on protein and fat, and have them be digested, within 30 minutes. Not a very big portion of food. You might honestly get to the point where you don't really feel very full during breakfast and dinner. You feel nourished, but you don't feel full, because those are two different things, two different feelings.
For sure.
And then, second breakfast, lunch, your two lunches, your lunch and first dinner, whatever you want to call it, those would be your larger meals in the day. And you, again, if you can, time that around activity, time that around when you're actually doing things with your body, and you'll notice that your digestion, just from adjusting when and how you eat, makes a pretty big difference. And then you apply all the other stuff we talked about tonight, the quality of ingredients, the macro ratio, prioritizing proteins, prioritizing carbohydrates that are complex carbs that are high in fibers and starches, especially if you're a woman, and not just filled with empty sugar. You're eliminating the ultra processed foods. You're focused on your macros and your micronutrients, getting all the essential things, eating a wide variety, like an omnivorous variety of food. You're not just isolating yourself in a box of a certain, 2 or 3 food groups. You're opening things up and really trying to bring in a big breadth of nutrition and different sources of those nutrients. You'll see a big difference, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think those are some, great tips and principles that people can go ahead and chew on for a little bit. Absolutely.
I see what you did there. That was good.
Anyways, and so again,
Nice.
as mentioned earlier, in our next podcast episode, so next week, Tuesday, EST, or 7 p.m. EST, sorry. We're going to be going over a lot of the Q&A that are going to be associated with this along the lines of nutrition and the principles of the living diet.
Exactly.
And, we hope to see you guys there.
Yeah,
and thank
sure.
you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for being part of this. Again, thank you to our donors and, everyone watching and stuff. We really want to reach a lot of people. We have a big heart, big aspiration for, for people having the chance to be healthy.
Exactly. So thank you guys for watching. This has been the Revitalize podcast. Have a great night. Eat some healthy food. Enjoy it. And we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Beautiful. Bye, guys.